I think people can. Good morning, everyone. I think we're almost ready to start. We'll let some people take their seats. Are we all ready?
Charlene's on the wrong one. That's fine. You can sit there. Yeah, no flip them. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. So we'll get started now. Good morning, everyone. Before the meeting begins, we allowed our interpreter to introduce themselves and provide instructions for interpretation.
Yes,
Do we
good
have an
morning.
interpreter?
Announcement from the interpreter. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon, the world, and select English as your language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app from a cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish below in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you're in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación de móvil de Zoom desde su celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión, por favor pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to the September 17, 2024 hashtag meeting. I'm your chair, Alex Warner. Can we have our clerk, Tessa, please confirm quorum with the roll call?
Good morning. Special interest voting member, seat A, Ted Kagan. Special interest voting member, seat B, Alex Warner.
Yeah.
And Clyde E. Kohler. At-large voting member, seat A, Sharon Beckus. And Todd Shaw.
Present.
At-large voting member, seat B, Todd Lordson.
Present.
And Marissa Romero Lucero. At-large voting member, seat C, Charlene Ornelas.
Present.
San Diego Center for the Blind is absent. Travelers Aid Society of San Diego, Marcy Rourke. Here. And Adriana Yamhapte.
Present.
Options for All is absent. On the Go, Maureen Glazer.
Here.
Jewish Family Services, Christine Stensberg.
Here.
Marilyn Greenblatt.
Here.
Fact Seat A, Ali Poorman. And Paola Zilli.
Alternate here. Sophia Hughes.
Fact Seat B, Sophia Hughes.
Here.
MTS Fixed Route is absent. MTS Paratransit, Charles Posapal.
Present.
NCTD Fixed Route is absent, and NCTD Paratransit, Robert Gibo.
Here.
And also Fact Seat B, Arun Prem. And that concludes the roll call and confirms a quorum.
Thank you, Tessa. I'd like to welcome our newly appointed member, Charlene, Marlene,
Yes.
and Tina. Thank you. Okay. So welcome to this committee. To participate at the meeting, members of the committee may raise their hand and I will call on by your name. But if you say your name, that helps me. Sometimes I forget names. Thank you. Members of the public who are in person can submit a speaker's slip to the clerk to give a comment. Online public commenters can use the raise hands feature on Zoom. with that, let's start with item 1, which is the election of chair and vice chair for the upcoming year. Brian will briefly discuss the process.
All right, thank you, Chair. So
Yeah.
we'll be looking for nominations for the chair and vice chair. Because this is a Brown Act regulated meeting and we try to follow Robert's Rules of Orders, we need, if there's a nomination on the floor in a second, we then have to follow through with that, or we'd have to pull it off if we're trying to do multiple nominations. But essentially, we're trying to get a nomination on the floor, seconded, and then we can vote on that, unless there's multiple people that are willing to take the chair position, but I'm not sure what the plan is. So we can take them one at a time, or if there's one clean and easy chair and vice chair nomination and second, we can then just take that as one vote and vote on that if it's clean and simple. So, I mean, we appreciate Alex's time as being chair for the last 2 years, I believe, right? And Ted's help with vice chair. Alex has mentioned she wouldn't mind giving it up to someone else. And I have heard some other people may be willing to take the chair. So we'll open it up to the floor. And if there's nominations for chair and vice chair, we'll take it and we can figure it out. But again, we can't have multiple nominations for multiple seats out at one time. So it should be as clean and easy break as possible. So.
Hi, good morning. This is Adriana with Travelers Aid. I'd like to nominate Christine from Jewish Family Services as chair and Marcy Roque from Travelers Aid as vice chair, please.
I'd like to second.
Okay, so
So second, are there other nominations for chair? Seeing none, let's vote on the nomination of,
just make sure, is there any discussion on this, or does this sound good?
And just to clarify, the motion on the floor is to elect both the chair and the vice chair.
Right. And it's Christine and Marcy.
Yeah, this is Sharon Beckus. I have a question. Is that a package deal?
Since Adriana brought it up as a package deal, yeah.
Okay, because I thought we were going to do it individually, just asking. Thank you.
It was brought up as a package deal.
Okay.
It could get voted down or pulled as a package deal if there's others that want to be nominated or not. But that's why just make sure that we can have a discussion right now
Okay.
before we vote, if there's any alternatives or other thoughts we might want to do.
I'd like it unpackaged.
What's that?
I would like it unpackaged, separate for chair and separate for vice chair, please.
do I have a motion to unpackage?
So,
That's what you have. I'll
so your
second
only
it.
options at this point are to rescind the motion on the floor by unanimous consent of the body. And the chair would just need to ask if they remove this motion from the floor, if there are any objections. If there are any objections from the body, then you would have to take a vote on that motion.
Yeah. So let's just, Sharon, what's your thinking here? What do you want?
My thinking was I have no issue with chair. I have an issue with vice chair and Travelers Aid.
You what? I'm sorry?
I have no issue with chair with Jewish Family Services.
Uh-huh.
I have an issue with Travelers Aid as vice chair.
What is that? Do you have an alternate?
Yeah, I'd like to see if Alex would be willing to take vice chair. Warner.
It's up to Alex. She had mentioned to me, she's being too nice right now, but she had mentioned to me via email that she's very busy at work and
Okay.
preferred to have someone else take over this very difficult job
Well,
for here.
okay. I'd like to nominate myself, Ted Kagan, member of Lodge, as vice chair.
I second that, Sharon Beckus.
So
Before we can entertain another motion on the floor, one of the other options for the original motion is to bifurcate the motion and take a vote on the chair position, separate from the vote on the vice chair position. But then you would still have on the floor a motion to appoint the vice chair, and that separate motion at that point would have to be acted upon.
That's what we agreed upon. Yes. Okay. So,
So Adriana, as the original motion maker, are you okay unpackaging it, right? Is
Yeah,
that the-
that's fine. If I have to withdraw my motion to package them and do it separately, then I
Okay.
nominate Christine in one and Marcy in the other for. vice chair.
Gotcha. So now we have it unpackaged.
Sorry.
So we'll bifurcate that motion with the approval of the consent of the motion and the second for that original motion. And the chair would then move on to discussion for the bifurcated motion for the chair position.
So,
So where are we?
so do we have a motion to unpackage? Can I get a second on that?
Do we need?
No, you don't
We
need a
don't need it.
motion. You already
Okay.
have a motion, and I'm sorry, I did not catch the names of the people who made the motion and the vice and the second, but the motion right now on the floor is bifurcated, and the only one you're acting on is to vote for the chair, Christine Stensberg, motion on the floor, which has a second.
Perfect. So we're good to go to vote on the chair unless there's any other discussion.
All in favor?
We'll let the clerk. I think we're
Call for
good.
the
So if
question.
you want to take the vote
A
on.
roll call vote? Yes, I can do that. So for the bifurcated motion, we're voting on the chair, Christine Stensberg, for 2025. Special interest voting member seat A, Ted Kagan.
Yes.
Is aye or no? Aye.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Special interest voting member seat B, Chair Warner.
Yes.
At-large voting member seat A, Sharon Beckus.
Yes. Yes.
At-large voting member seat B, Todd Lordson.
Yes.
At-large voting member seat C, Charlene Ornelas.
Yes.
San Diego Center for the Blind is absent. Travelers Aid, Marcy Rourke. Yes. Options for All is absent. On the Go, Maureen Glazer. Jewish Family Services, Christine Stensberg.
Yes.
Fact Seat A, Ali Poorman. Fact Seat B, Arun Prem.
Yes.
MTS Fixed Route is absent. MTS Paratransit, Charles Prosapal.
Yes.
NCS Fixed Route, NCTD Fixed Route is absent, and NCTD Paratransit, Robert Gibo.
Yes.
That motion passed unanimously with those members present.
Congratulations to our new chair.
And now you would need to act on the bifurcated motion for the vice chair. And Mox, I didn't catch the name of
So Marcy.
Marcy Work.
So now Sharon has brought up Ted. Your preference would be for Ted to,
That's affirmed. Yes.
right?
If she wanted to announce that as a substitute motion, then if she would get a second on her substitute motion, you could take that before you take the original motion for Marcy Work.
Gotcha. So thoughts between Marcy and Ted? Thoughts on being vice chair?
Yes.
You want to be vice chair as well?
Yes.
Gotcha. Marcy, what do you think? To be vice chair?
I'm happy to do it if I'm voted in.
Right.
No hard feelings if I'm not.
So it's up to the committee now we have the motion on the floor for Marcy, right, with the second. But if Sharon did bring up a substitute motion, it sounds like for Ted, right?
That's correct. Substitute for Ted.
Substitute motion for Ted. So we would need a second on that. If someone else wants to proceed with that, if there's no second, then we would just go back to the original motion of Marcy.
I will second for Ted.
What Alex did. Okay, we have a second on the substitute.
Okay, so now you have a substitute motion on Ted Kagan as vice chair, the motion and a second, so you'll need to vote on that.
And then, so if this vote fails, then we would go back to the original motion of Marcy, right?
Right.
Yeah. So now we'll do a roll call vote for the substitute motion for Ted.
So this vote is for
Vice chair.
Ted for vice chair.
Ted for vice.
You
chair.
for vice
Okay.
chair.
Okay, I'll do a roll call vote as well for the substitute motion for Ted Kagan as vice chair. Special interest voting seat A, Ted Kagan,
Ted Kagan, yes.
and seat B, Alex Warner.
Yes.
At large voting member seat A, Sharon Beckus,
Yes.
and seat B, Todd Lordson,
Yes.
and seat C, Charlene Ornelas.
Yes.
San Diego Center for the Blind is absent. Travelers Aid, Marcy Rourke.
I'll do it next year.
No. Options for All is absent. On the Go, Maureen Glazer.
I'm gonna abstain.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Jewish Family Services, Christine Stensberg.
I'm gonna also abstain.
Fact Seat A, Ali Poorman.
Yes.
Fact Seat B, Arun Prem.
Yes.
MTS Fixed Route is absent. MTS Paratransit, Charles Posapal.
Yes.
NCTD Fixed Route is absent. NCTD Paratransit, Robert Gibo.
Yes.
And that motion passes with 1 no, 2 abstentions.
It's the one.
Congratulations, Ted. You are again the vice chair. So. Number 2 in the agenda.
We do need to take public comments on this item.
Is there any public comments on item 1?
The original draw, please go ahead.
No public comments?
No, there is.
Oh,
No, there is. No.
We can't hear you.
Charlie, we'll get to you in a sec.
I guess her audio is not working, so we can move on, Chair.
yes. Are there any member comments on item 1? Charlene?
Yes, I have a couple of comments. They're somewhat related. The security needs a lot more training in dealing with people with vision loss.
Charlene, if you want to hold these for member comment, that's the next item.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was the chair and vice chair election. The
Oh,
next
okay.
item will be
No, I
our.
thought, okay. I thought
Yeah, I think you mean it for then.
Okay, I thought we were on.
And-
No,
and
sorry.
comments.
We already
It's
did
a
member
confusing start
comments.
to today's meeting.
We did already do member comments on item 1, so we can move on to item 2.
We're on item 1. Is there any, no comments? Okay. Okay, we can move into the rest of the agenda. Item 2 includes public comments, members, and staff update. Are there any agenda public comments?
Thank you, Chair. I have 1 public comment, the original draw, 2, excuse me, the original draw. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I was trying to do it for the last one, and I was concerned about Jewish Family Services being due to all of the things that the Jewish Family Services is engaged in and is very secretive in trying to hide what their involvement is, or just keep the people away, and their involvement with the are coming across the border and all of the aiding and abetting that they're doing, all the facilitating of giving them room, board, transportation. Anytime you try and ask them anything, they're try and hide it, and that's leads me to believe that that person would not actually be a good chair if their entity is engaged in obfuscation. So I think that's a very big concern, but I also wanted to know if you guys are aware of the airport cargo terminal, that there are flights that are going out from there that are with ICE detainees. and happen on a regular basis. They're being transported on our dime to different detention centers. It's a big money laundering scheme, basically, through Core Civic and Geo Group. They're getting funding from the federal government to be a people mover, kind of like Jewish Family Services is. And they're all engaged in this invasion that we have coming across the border. And, a bunch of billions, if not trillions of dollars is being spent on it. And it's very dangerous to our nation. But just the fact that there's these flights that are going on and those are trying to be hidden as well. It's just very telling when there's a lot of obfuscation going on and there's no transparency or accountability with the public, who these people are supposed to be serving. So, I just think we need to be aware and transparent with the people of what's actually happening right under our nose on a regular basis. And probably right now, a flight is being loaded at the Ash.
And your time expired. Our final public commenter on this item, David Jackson, please go ahead.
I'm just sorry to hear about the funds being not 100% given. I am glad to hear about the safety is gonna stay the same, but I guess funds for expanding services is being affected. But just unfortunate. Just a quick comment. That's it. Thanks.
And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Do any members have non-agenda comments? Charlene?
All right. Things have changed. I've been away for a little bit. I'm back. The security needs a lot of training. I have 2 instances to express. The first one was there was a bridge needed for the trolley. I'm now living in Chula Vista. My train ended at 12th and Imperial. Told to get off the trolley. And I'm going, where do I go? Nobody's helping. Nobody's telling me. So I finally found a security officer who said, you need to go over there. I'm going, where's over there? I finally convinced him that I needed him to guide me. I can't tell my dog to go over there and her understand that. I have to give her directions, left, right, forward. And I finally got to where I needed to, got on a bus. When we got to the connection for the continuation of the blue line, got off the bus and no help. And there's bars to stop people from getting into the trolley stations just at any point. You have to go to the ends of the station. I'm not sure how far down to go. It would have been helpful to have somebody there to assist. And as it was, the crowd, ran ahead of me, seeing where to go. They got on the trolley, loaded it, couldn't get on the trolley. So I had to sit and wait for quite a while for another trolley to come in and get full enough to be able to pull out. The lack of understanding the blind people do not know where over there is. For a blind person, it seems pretty obvious. If you close your eyes and I point, I'll roll you odds. You won't know where I'm pointing. I don't know where they're pointing either. The second one was even more crazy. Trying to go to the ASAC committee meeting on Thursday, entered the building where they have changed the layout. So I entered where I thought I was supposed to go through, went through metal detector, sat my dog, told her to stay, asking security, should I call my dog? Because I know she'll trigger the equipment. Can I call my dog? Silence, 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 silence. Finally, one guy says, do you want your dog to come in? I'm going, yeah, it's a guide dog. I need the dog. Oh, okay, we'll call you dog. Okay, finally. And then I had already walked through security. The metal detector was clean, but the guy had to still wand me. I don't know why. I turned him on and whatever. I then proceeded to the elevator and I was like, no, the bathrooms are over there. Oh, I'm not going to the bathroom. You can't go to the elevators. I have a meeting I'm trying to get to. Go, and then they go, oh, go over there, sign in. Can you tell me where there is? You need to go over there. The guy finally told me if I didn't go over where he told me to go, I wasn't going to the meeting. I would be kicked out of the building and have to come back. Gotta be kidding. Finally, one of the officers, when I said, close your eyes and pointed behind me, said, where am I pointing? Goes, oh, he says, come and follow, come over here and you can follow, and I'll show you where to go. Very helpful, but it was not helpful at all to just be told, because I can't tell where they're pointing, I'm not coming to a meeting. And then at the meeting, I found out that security is also careful to watch and help people in wheelchairs to get on trolleys after Padre games and big events. Didn't say anything about looking for blind people who need to find a spot on the trolley too. I think we're an ignored group, and security needs to be much more aware of the needs of people with vision loss. Not everybody has a guide dog. Not everybody who has a vision loss uses a white cane. There's some people who, as we say it, fake it. I did it for years. I used to figure if I walked in a straight line, I'd find the other side of a street or followed people. I'd get to where I was going. Now I know how many chances I took. It's scary, but they definitely need much more training on how to discuss, interact, and be around people with disabilities, and especially people who are blind. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you for the comment. Are there any other members comments? Anyone else? Okay. Seeing a further comment, we will continue to the next item, which is our consent agenda, including the minutes from your live meeting. Are there any public comments on the consent agenda?
Thank you. There's one public comment, the original draw. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad to hear Charlene talk like that about what's going on. And when you're talking about unmet needs, public needs, I feel like that kind of falls under that we need to be more mindful of when there are, disadvantaged persons or disabled, and the treatment that they are getting when they are, engaged in using transit or just trying to get around. That's a really big concern that shouldn't be taking place, and it should be mitigated so that we don't have, employees who are supposed to be providing a service treating people in such a manner that is pretty horrific and disturbing. But also when we talk about unmet needs, when we have Jewish Family Services providing all of these, like the migrants that are coming don't have any, lack in need of resources, but yet the fact that we even have to have an item where it's talking about public unmet needs, maybe you need to talk to Jewish Family Services and see all they're providing for these illegal immigrants that come across the border. They're not having to wonder, where they're going to eat, or wonder how they're going to be transported, wonder where they're going to stay, because they are getting anything and everything under the sun facilitated by the Jewish Family Services and Catholic Charities. And so when we have people in the public that are lacking, that's why it's a concern for Jewish Family Services to be a chair, because if they're not going to be making sure that they're providing exactly what the public need, but they'll provide it for people who commit a federal offense and cross the border illegally, how can there be trust when the public is suffering and there's things that they need to be able to have to get around? And, maybe if they had charter buses that they could just go get on and be taken wherever, maybe that would be better. So maybe we need to think about our community over the people that are invading our community and the people that are helping aid and abet that.
And that concludes the public comments.
Are there any comments or questions from the members? If not, I'll ask. No comments from the members? If not, I'll ask a motion to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda from the members?
So moved.
Christine,
Charlene, I'll second.
second.
We'll declare, please take the vote.
Second, special interest voting member seat A, Ted Kagan,
Ted Kagan, yes.
and seat B, Alex Warner.
Yes.
At-large voting member, seat A, Sharon Beckus.
Yes.
Seat B, Todd Lordson. And seat C, Charlene Ornelas.
Yes.
San Diego Center for the Blind is absent. Travelers Aid, Marcy Rourke.
Yes.
Options for All is absent. On the Go, Maureen Glazer.
Yes.
Jewish Family Services, Christine Stensberg.
Yes.
Fact, seat A, Ali Porman.
Yes.
Fact, seat B, Arun Prem. MTS Fixed Route is absent. MTS Paratransit, Charles Prosapol.
Yes.
NCTD Fixed Route, Mary is absent. NCTD Paratransit, Robert Gibo. And that motion passes with 2 abstentions.
Thank you. We will move to the next item. Item 4 is an update on survey development for the coordinated plan. We have a presentation from Ruby and Tim.
Good morning, Chair Warner, incoming Chair Stensberg, congratulations, and members of the STAC. Thank you for having us here today. My name is Tim Garrett, Associate Regional Planner with SANDAG. I'm joined by Ruby Morales, another Associate Regional Planner with SANDAG. We are here, you heard from Ruby a few months ago when we were just getting started with the coordinated plan. We're here today to present an update on where we are in the process, our continued approach, and we'd like to hear your feedback on the upcoming components of the plan. So in particular, we're going to be looking for your feedback. Hope you can help us out with the goals and objectives, some of the topics to discuss in our survey, and proposed ways of analyzing data. So just a reminder on what the coordinated plan is. It provides a 5-year blueprint for SANDAG and partner agencies to provide transit and social services transportation throughout the San Diego region. The plan focuses on strategies to address the transportation needs for the region's older adults, people with disabilities, and people with limited means. And completing the plan fulfills various requirements and ensures that funding is available for providers in the region. And I'm sure all of you are aware, but just to get everyone on the same page for definitions, transit, we're referring to fixed route, buses, trolleys, trains, et cetera. And specialized transportation is the services that many of you all provide, including shuttles and vans with eligibility for people with disabilities and older adults. So the coordinated plan combines federal, state, and local requirements into a single document. Federal transit law requires that we develop a plan that considers folks in our region with transportation disadvantages and identifies the unmet transportation needs. The plan must then identify strategies to better meet those needs and establish priorities for funding. One of the outcomes of the coordinated plan is that SANDAG then distributes funding through the Specialized Transportation Grant Program. This program includes funding from the Federal Transit Administration, known as Section 5310, and it also includes local funding from the Transnet Senior Mini Grant Program. State requirements come from the Transportation Development Act, or TDA. TDA funding is an important source of planning and operating funds for SANDAG, as well as our transit agencies, MTS and NCTD. The plan is supposed to incorporate recommendations from the triennial TDA performance audit and make sure that our services are productive, meaning they're serving many passengers per hour of service. And then finally, the local requirements come from SANDAG Board Policy 18, which divides transit planning responsibilities among SANDAG, MTS, and NCTD. The coordinated plan evaluates existing services, provides the methodology for proposing near-term service adjustments, and satisfies requirements for a regional short-range transit plan. So there are clearly many requirements that we're aiming to comply with, but within that framework, we get to define the goals and objectives for the plan. This will have an effect for the next several years because applicants to the Specialized Transportation Grant Program must demonstrate that they're meeting the goals and objectives of the coordinated plan. So the previous plan, which was adopted in 2020, several years ago now, had these goals here summarized in the bullet points. Upgrading key corridors in urbanized areas, being fiscally responsible, and providing effective transportation services defined by many different ways: productivity, coordination, convenient, etc. So we want to know if the goals and objectives that we had in the previous plan are still relevant and appropriate to maintain in the new plan. Should we continue having all of them, some of them? Should we start from scratch? We'll be incorporating feedback from what we hear today, as well as we're going to other working groups and asking folks what the goals and objectives should be. One kind of point to get started on the discussion is that the previous goals were fairly broad. And so it's fairly easy for an applicant to make the case that their project is consistent with the goals. So one of the things we're thinking about is maybe if we have goals that are a little bit more tailored to specific gaps, that the implementation of those can be a little bit more narrowly defined. It can better respond to those needs. And maintaining a focus on accountability and efficiency is likely appropriate for certain services, but we also understand that it might be appropriate to have different standards for different types of services. For example, transit services operating in rural areas, or specialized transportation services operating for folks who have greater need of assistance. We also want to add in a consideration of equity, both for making sure that people in need have access to transportation that suits them, and also so that higher ridership services receive the appropriate level of investment and service quality. One final consideration is that we know there's not enough funding to go around. And so being thoughtful with the goals and funding priorities allows us to provide the greatest benefit with the funds that are available. And so at the end of the presentation, we'd love to hear feedback from the STAC on what you'd like us to include for goals and objectives. Next, Ruby will discuss the outreach plans for the project.
Thanks, Tim. So a main component of our outreach will be our survey. So the last coordinated plan had a questionnaire, and that was able to speak to the different themes on transportation needs, but we wanted data that was more statistically significant. So we will be working with a consultant to develop a sampling plan that will consist of random and convenience samples. So with the survey, people will be able to take it if they choose to, but we will also be distributing the survey randomly. And using a random sample approach means that we will be able to get responses from all areas of the region. So some of the topics we hope to cover with the survey are the transportation needs of older adults and people with disabilities. We also want to know where the trips are originating, the destination, the purpose, the frequency, as well as the eligibility and availability of transportation services by time and location. So we want to know if these services are restricted by a certain time or geographic location as well. And we hope to be able to determine the effectiveness of the existing transportation services. So some of our proposed data sources to guide our goals and objectives are the survey results themselves, as well as existing SANDAG data. So we'll be taking a look at estimate, forecast, employment center, traffic safety data from SANDAG. And we've already requested data from MTS and NCC regarding their transit networks and performance. And if we need additional demographic data, we'll take a look at the US Census America Community Survey as well. So our proposed analysis is to map the current and forecast demographic data as well as the provider service areas. So this is important because if the senior population is expected, for example, to increase in the future, we want to be able to see where the gaps in services will be so we can identify strategies that could fill those gaps and best meet the needs. So this slide kind of goes over our next steps and milestones that we hope to complete over the next few months. Like I mentioned, we'll begin our survey and data collection efforts this fall. As Tim mentioned, we'll be taking this presentation to other SANDAG working groups starting now. And through fall and winter, we hope to outreach to writers and service providers. So we'll be having focus groups for service providers and writers as well. And as we receive data, we will be identifying needs. We'll be formulating strategies to address those needs, and ultimately we'll be releasing a draft coordinated plan followed by a comment period, and we hope to present our plan in the spring. For more information on this effort, you can explore our project page, and that's sandag.org/coordinated plan. And you can also follow us on social media. You can reach out to the project team at coordinatedplan@sandag.org. And Tim's and my personal emails are also on the screen. And that concludes our presentation. So I would like to turn it over back to you, Chair Warner, to facilitate any questions or comments. Thank you.
Is there any questions from the presenter? Go ahead. Marcy.
Thank you for the presentation. I wondered if you could pull up the existing goals and objective from the 2020 plan again, so that we can think about that as we're having the discussion.
I'm sorry, I skipped the public comment, so we're okay? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. We have one public commenter on this item. The original draw, please go ahead.
Yes, I think that it's important to provide, transportation to those that can't just go out and get it. And when you're doing surveys, I mean, I feel like maybe you're not doing enough to make sure that, people are having access to that. So I'm wondering where you would do those surveys and what kind of outreach other than that, I don't know necessarily how you do it, but a lot of people possibly aren't going to know anything about this. I know I was paralyzed for 8 years and in a wheelchair, and it wasn't easy to find information as far as, how you can get transportation and things like that. And then I know that there's been people that have called in before who have voiced their concerns regarding the fact that, they're being, I don't know if you would call it discrimination, but maybe they don't check all the boxes or the requirements, and they need this transportation, but they're unable to get it due to a couple of different reasons. So I feel like it needs to be so that it is available to all people, and that the requirements aren't so strict that people that actually need it aren't able to get it. And so that's important. So that's it. Thanks.
And that concludes the public comments.
Hello?
We come back. Did we finish with Marcy? Marcy, go ahead. Can you repeat your question again?
I had just asked them to pull up the 2020 goals and objectives, which they did. But in thinking more about that, we apply for specialized transportation grant funding at my organization. And as part of that application process, we're to align our proposals with the coordinated plan. And we have to identify which objectives we are aiming to meet. In our organization, all of our clients are extremely low income. And I think that there should be more of an emphasis on filling the gaps of transportation for people without means as part of the new goals and objectives for the new plan.
Kathleen? I'm hearing you talking about the survey, and I'm wondering what kind of effort is being made to accommodate people who are handicapped, who can't, either because of vision or other reasons, cognitive, whatever, are not able to handle and work with the print format for questionnaires and surveys. And if they're online, that eliminates a lot of people, because not everybody has access to the internet. And even today, as much as it's important to have it, it's still a lot of people don't have it, especially seniors and people with disabilities.
I can respond to that if you'd like.
Yes, please, Tim.
Okay, sure. Yeah, so we're right now in the process of hiring a consultant who will be conducting the survey in collaboration with us. So the planned way to reach out to folks to let them know that the survey is available is through postcards. So we'll have our consultant will be mailing postcards out to many folks across the region, encouraging them to take the survey. We do plan on having it online, but also with a phone line available so that people can call and get assistance completing the survey. But if those are, we definitely want to hear feedback if those are not sufficient and if there are alternative ways of providing the survey that we should be considering. Definitely want to hear.
Okay. Can I visit? If you use the phone and make phone calls to people, I'm not sure how you'll get that information out. There are agencies that work with people with disabilities, different disabilities. But think about it. Oh, I'm going to send out a postcard. Close your eyes. Can you read it? Can I go on the internet? If you don't have internet, can you do it? These are what are limiting people with limited means and people with that are print disabled and are leaving them out of the loop. And they're some of the people that need it the most. Thank you.
Any other comments from the members? Okay, Arun?
Thank you, Tim and Ruby, for the presentation. I had a clarification question and then follow-up comment or question. The coordinated plan requirement came from federal funding authorization legislation years ago when it was presented as a transit paratransit coordination plan requirement. So is that changed, or is it just our choice to call it a coordinated plan instead of a transit paratransit coordination plan? It's a historic question, and this goes back a while.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but it does derive from FTA requirements and the FTA circular. The same guidance from the FTA is being used since like 2017. I believe it's been updated multiple times before that, but 2017 is the same guidance that we're using from that. I believe it's SANDAG's decision to call it the coordinated plan. In other regions throughout the country, they have slightly different names for it. Sometimes it is a paratransit coordinated plan, so human services coordination plan. The names vary a little bit, but I think what's unique about SANDAG's plan is that we do have some of those local requirements, board requirements as well. So our plan is going to be a little bit different from the ones that are conducted in other regions, but obviously we all need to follow the federal guidance in order to have access to that Section 5310 funding.
And really quickly, the full name of the coordinated plan is the Regional Short Range Transit Plan and Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan. That's the full name on the cover page. So it is both still, Arun. I think we all like coordinated plan better.
Thanks, Brian. I think that's really helpful. So my recommendation, based on the intent of FTA when this was first presented, is to emphasize the transit paratransit coordination in the name and title of this plan, because I think it matters. Yes. It conveys more clearly what coordination we're shooting for. And as follow-up to that, I wanted to say that in the objectives, thank you, Marcy, for bringing them up again. There is this desire to reduce costs through coordinated efforts and to have coordination amongst transportation services. It's my experience, at least, that looking at the coordinated plans, as fact, we were very involved in these plans and during development. You don't really see coordination between entities, any sort of entities, nonprofits themselves or nonprofit and paratransit or paratransit and transit. I have not seen such projects come out of the implementation or execution of these plans. And I think that's a real shortcoming. I would say that's a failure of this plan. So I would recommend in this iteration that you encourage real tangible coordination between different entities, because that's how you achieve this objective of reduced costs through coordination. If different entities are implementing different projects in silos and independently of one another, that's really not real coordination. Thank you.
Thank you, Arun. Any other comments from, yes?
You mentioned that this should be completed around spring of 2025. Is that the earliest you can get it done? I'm concerned with the FTA triennial audit at the same exact time as the release of this. it just might be chaotic for all of us.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we'll be collecting, or we'll begin our data collection efforts this fall. And so we really have to essentially work on the survey as well. And then our collection efforts will take a few months. So we really won't be able to like analyze the data till like late winter. So yeah, it's a tight deadline.
Yeah, definitely. Everything Ruby said is correct. We'll probably be able to bring you a draft to STAC for, some of the substantive components for feedback before, it's ready for adoption. So if folks on STAC are interested in getting updates, we're happy to bring them back throughout the process so that we can keep you engaged.
Any other, Sharon?
Yeah, I have a question. What Arun said was very interesting to me about the lack of coordination, the shortcoming of the coordination between paratransit and transit. The other thing that I support is Charlene's feedback about how the underserved community of the visually challenged are not met. And if you're going to send out a survey, if you're going to send it out during voting season, that's going in the round can at my house. So you have to also watch the timing on something like that, because we're getting bombarded in mail of things that are even going to be looked at. And then why not use, I'm going to volunteer MTS, why not use MTS drivers that are on light duty to be at the Old Town trolley station or different trolley stations to do some surveys, especially for those who are visually challenged, to help them fill out the form, because that's part of the problem, is filling out the form. And how I personally know that, I'm visually challenged, but not to that degree yet. And I said, yet. I went to get my COVID vaccine and I had to fill out a form that I couldn't even read. I think it's a size 8 font. So you really need to think about, like Charlene mentioned, the size of the survey, and maybe someone to help, and I'm volunteering MTS, to be at those centers to say, hey, let us help you to do that. So I'd like to see that. And also, you have some fabulous agencies here in town, such as Jewish Family Services, FACT. Use them, Traveler's Aid, use them, send the surveys to them. They have a great database to go ahead and do. Get that coordination going, get that shortcoming less of a shortcoming. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, Sharon. Good points. On that, I think, I had the same comment. There's a lot of groups that can help you, that represent or do services for different types of disabilities, that can help you facilitate those surveys, because sending them to the person directly, and sometimes it does not reach, and they will need alternative forms or anything like that. But when you reach institutions that provide services for people with disabilities, then they can help you facilitate the survey, which is really important. The fact is that a lot of people does not use transportation because there's the service that they need. I'll have Marisa first, and then Charlene after.
Okay, so I just had I guess it's a two-part question. On the proposed data sources, you had mentioned accessing NCTD and MTTS's transit network and performance data. So I kind of had a question for NCTD. I know that myself and some of my students and their families have requested specific interest in areas that are not being served currently by the transit system in North County. And so I was wondering if that is data that you would provide to them, because that information, I guess, you wouldn't have transit already running through those areas, but it might be needed. So I didn't know if that was something that would be provided to them, or if that's something separate.
Maybe I can jump in. That's like 3 of the chapters deal with one of the chapters is what are the services that are out there today? And so we have maps and things like that. And then there's the gaps or the needs. Actually, there's the needs. So where's all the needs around the county? And so and then you overlay those two and you get the gaps essentially of, here's a ton of areas where there's no transit fixed route service, where our specialized providers aren't serving or providing, on-demand services, things like that. And then so that's where that's that needs chapter is the big one of here's all the needs. Okay. And then the next chapter is the objectives to try to meet those
Yes.
those gaps.
Okay.
And then there's a funding chapter, and always, of course, the funding chapter or the funding levels is 100 times below what the needs are, right? So
Okay.
that's part of the challenge. But they have cool maps in the coordinated plan that's showing those gaps.
Where the gaps are. Okay.
Yeah.
That was my only question, just because I've noticed there's some areas where there's been a lot of development in North County. However, the transit is not meeting the development. And so I just wanted to make sure those areas are getting addressed. So thank you.
Thank you, Marisa. Charlene?
Yes, I can't speak for other agencies. In trying to get input from people that are blind, I will tell you that the Blind Community Center can assist. We have a lot of volunteers, and I can have volunteers actually filling out the forms for people who come to the Blind Community Center, and that we have a wide variety of skills and abilities at the center. The Bell Institute's, the San Diego Center for the Blind also might be able to do that too. And you got the Easter Seal, the Regional Center, you've got Access to Independence. So you have other agencies, and you might want to look at working with the different agencies serving people with, or who have contact with people with disabilities, to assist with getting the surveys filled out and the information collected. Thank you.
And we do have Samantha and Kimberly from San Diego Center for the Blind that serve on STAC. I think they're listening virtually today, so I'll help put Tim and Ruby in contact with them as well, because I think that's a great suggestion.
Do you see any other comments or questions? I got a question. When was the needs for the 2020 plan that information taken?
I think probably 2019 was probably the latest data at that point. The plan was adopted in July of 2020, so a lot of the prep work would have been done throughout that winter and spring going into 2020, so pre-pandemic.
The second question, have we assessed how many of the needs or the gaps found on the 2020 report were able to be addressed? Is there a report for that from the plan, previous plan?
I don't think we've reported it out. I mean, the idea of the specialized transportation grant program is that it is supposed to be an ongoing thing. You know, there's funding cycles every few years that are supposed to address it. But that's a good suggestion. I think we can incorporate that into the plan to say like what progress has been made over the last several years and what's the impact of the coordinated plan over time. I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Seeing no further comments, we can move to the next item. Thank you, Ruby and team. This is really important information for us to share. We appreciate that you came to the meeting. For item 5, we will hear information on the flexible fleets program scoring criteria from Danielle Koshman. Is that correct?
Coachman, but close enough.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, thank you. Good to see so many familiar faces. I know it's been a while. There's some new faces as well. It's been a while since I've been here, but happy to see many of you. So my name is Danielle Coachman. I am the manager of strategic partnerships in the planning department at SANDAG. I'm actually here for Kalisa today, who is our lead for the flexible fleet program, but she's at the Diamond Awards today. So I did her a favor and stepped in. I've had a role in this program in various ways over the last few years. So hopefully I can answer your questions, but I'm also here to take some discussion feedback to incorporate into the program. So flexible fleets are one of the strategies in our long-range transportation plan. And how we define them is shared services that are typically technology enabled, looking at moving towards more electric types of vehicles. And really what we're trying to get at here is providing more travel choices. We know that, we have all of our traditional transit and paratransit services complemented also by a robust network of nonprofits and social service transportation providers. With the advent of smartphones and apps, we really saw this kind of new form of, app ride hailing types of services. And so this is a suite of what it describes, we have the shared scooters and shared bikes, which were very popular when they initially rolled out. Also, there were some, negative impacts to many of our communities as well. And you don't see them out so many anymore. There are actually no bikes or scooter share services in the city of San Diego at this time. But we have seen increases in neighborhood electric vehicle services. And so those are the electric golf cart looking vehicles that provide shared services. We'll talk a little bit more about the services that are out today. We have car share services, which we have seen many come and go here in San Diego over the years. We've had Zipcar, Car2Go, and then ride sharing, ride hailing like Uber and Lyft. Van pool, which we've had a van pool program here in San Diego for a long time, but there's definitely been some ways that they've kind of iterated and become more, use some more like new technology and things like that. And we have electric vehicles available now as well. And then microtransit, which is those shared kind of hailed rides. And CTD just launched NCTD Plus, which is a microtransit service, which is in San Marcos. Yes, thank you for the nod. And so we also had the Carlsbad connector, which was a pilot a few years ago. And so those are typically larger vans than the neighborhood electric vehicles, looking at kind of the, the larger kind of multi-passenger vans that will typically have, 5 or 6 passengers in a wheelchair. So the SANDAG supported flexible fleets. We have, through a variety of opportunities, found limited amounts of funding for these types of services. There is no kind of traditional ongoing public funding for these types of services typically, but as we've been able to identify different opportunities, SANDAG has become involved in 3 pilot projects that are currently being deployed in the San Diego region. So we have the neighborhood electric vehicle up in Oceanside, which is called GoSide. We have the Beach Bug, which is in Pacific Beach, connecting the Mid-Coast Transit Station at Balboa out to the beach communities. And then Southeast San Diego Microtransit, which has not launched yet, but this was a grant that we were able to get from the state, partnering with one of the community-based organizations in Southeast San Diego to provide a shuttle service to fill an identified need that we found in that community for some time. And then, outside of the ones that SANDAG is directly involved in, a number of cities and even just private entities are launching these types of services around the region. And so Fred here in downtown San Diego, that has been our longest running neighborhood electric vehicle service. That's been around, I believe, about 7 or 8 years. They launched something similar in National City. They call it Frank. I think it should be called Franck, but nobody really likes my idea of putting a little beret on it. But so free rides around National City, Frank. The Island Express recently launched in Coronado. And then there's also a private company in Imperial Beach providing the service called IB Shuffling. For microtransit, so those larger vehicles, we have the Chula Vista Community Shuttle, which is funded through a state grant, the Carlsbad Good Ride, and then the NCTD Plus San Marcos project that I mentioned during the last slide. And then we have a couple other ones that are coming soon. We know that the North Park City Heights and El Cajon both received grants through, I keep calling it the state program, but it's called CMO, Clean Mobility Options, yeah. This a state program looking at electric clean vehicles for providing on-demand services. And then Ramona Microtransit, who also received a grant as well, a pretty substantial grant through the state, I believe through a water-related district thing. So thinking about, the STAC and, how these services overlay with our existing services, but then also, how we can provide improved access for our senior and disabled communities. For the SANDAG pilot projects, there are accessible wheelchair options for all of the services that we're involved in. And then additionally, we have the call center for, app-enabled types of services so that people that don't have access to smartphones or devices to hail a ride are able to call the call center and book the ride that way. And I know the last time we came to this group, we heard some feedback specifically about the call center for the Pacific Beach service. And we were able to take that feedback back to the vendor and work with them to work through some additional training for the people that were answering the phone calls. And hopefully we've seen an improved service available through the call center and PB. We've also expanded the zones both in Pacific Beach and in Oceanside to reach some senior housing facilities. And so we are working for, again, this is about providing travel choices, but for the people that these are a good option for, making sure that we're doing everything we can to make them as accessible and available as possible. All right, so one of the main reasons we're talking about this is because last October, our board approved a budget amendment that included some additional funding for these types of services for some additional pilots. So when we originally got involved in the space, it was kind of not, it was newer, right? And so there weren't a lot of partners that were interested in deploying these types of programs. We have heard a lot of increase in popularity, a lot of increase in interest. And so there are a lot of jurisdictions that want to deploy the services. And because of kind of the lack of consistent funding, we're looking at, how SANDAG can support with some initial money to hopefully get some of these programs started that can then continue from there. So because there's so much interest in this, to do these deployments, looking at more of a formal program where we select projects to provide funding to based on set criteria and receive some applications similar to how the specialized transportation program works. However, since the specialized transportation program is an ongoing funding source, there's a little more kind of I'd say like formality there, but there's also really the opportunity to award additional cycles based on performance. And we won't have that here because this is just one cycle. We don't have any funding identified for the long term, which is unfortunate, but I know that, we will continue to look for opportunities. There we go. All right, so a quick timeline about what we've been doing around developing this program. So as I mentioned, it was in October of last year that the funding became available, and we began to develop what the program parameters might look like and some criteria for evaluating different projects. And so we are looking at finalizing that over the next couple of months, and then sending out some type of notification that the funding's available and have applications available between January and March, select the projects with the evaluation committee in April, and then bring it around to all of our working groups and board of directors for funding recommendations late spring, early summer of next year, so that we could let people know next summer what projects were selected for funding. So when we first started socializing this idea, we went to a flexible fleet task force and then also the mobility working group. And we came with some ideas about things that might be important to community members and also the providers of these, future services. And so these were the ideas that we looked at as and asked for rankings around, financial sustainability. What's most important? Are we looking towards influencing travel behavior, integrating these services with the existing public transit network? Do we really want to focus on equity? And so we heard different pieces and different interests from the different committees that we went to. But we did see that piece around financial sustainability rising towards the top. We know that that's important since this isn't a sustaining funding source and this is a one-time thing. And also looking at how we could influence travel behavior so that people were interested in, these more sustainable options. From there, we use that to develop an initial draft evaluation criteria. And we brought that to the Regional Planning Committee, Borders Committee, and Transportation Committee joint meeting back in June. And we heard some feedback from those committee members around, the same kinds of things with the evaluation criteria, the importance for sustainable funding and how critical a piece that is, and then looking at how we can collaborate better with our transit operators, MTS and NCTD. And then we used that to come up with some initial weightings and brought that back to our flexible fleet task force to get some criteria, to get some feedback there. And we've, incorporated everything we heard from all those different criterias to come up with the bones of a program, and then looking for some more feedback today. So we're, based on the funding action taken by the board, we'll have 4.5 million available total. That is our federal funding that's going to be available through the Federal Surface Transportation Program. And the initial proposal for the program is to have eligible applicants be local government agencies. So that means many of the nonprofits that participate in this group would look towards one of our local jurisdictions or transit operator as a partner to submit for this program. And the eligible grant types would either be for operations or for capital. So you could use it to purchase vehicles, software, or supportive infrastructure. And there's a variety of different activities that you could do with those fundings. So you could buy vehicles, you could buy software or hardware, you could look for supportive infrastructure. So vehicle charging, if you're looking to switch towards electric vehicle. I imagine that paying for the operations and service will be probably the biggest request, because that's the place that we see the least amount of funding and the biggest need. Based on the feedback that we've heard, we originally proposed a maximum amount of I believe $750,000, but as we were socializing this, we kept hearing from all of our stakeholders that maximum grant award needs to increase. So now we've kept ooching it up, and now we're at $1 million for the maximum grant award amount with a required match of 25%. The eligible service area would be anywhere in San Diego with a term of 1 to 3 years. You have to start operations within the first year of receiving the grant, and it could either be like a 1-year pilot, or you could spread the funding over up to 3 years. So we have the proposed evaluation criteria with weighting, and this is, along with the program parameters, what we're looking for feedback on today. So financial sustainability, we kept hearing that being the most important thing. So we're putting that criteria proposed initially at 20%. How you're able to really think about more sustainable travel behavior for people that are using your service. That one's at 10%. Integration with the public transit network, 15%. Marketing and outreach plan, 10%. And finally, equity, 10%. I believe that's my second to last slide. It is. So I will land there in case people want to speak to that one. But with that, I would love to take any comments or questions, and I will take notes for the project manager who wasn't able to join today.
Yeah. Thank you. Are there any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. I have one public comment. The original draw, please go ahead. Doctor, we can't hear you. It seems like she's having audio problems again, Chair, so that concludes the public comments.
Are there any member comments?
Thank you, Chair. Danielle, great to see you in person.
Good to see you.
I have 2 questions, and very different ones, so hopefully you can address both. The first one has to do with the different microtransits you listed in the beginning, early part of your presentation. I'm familiar with most of them, and they're all great. My question is, considering SANDAG is the party common to all of them and funding most of them to some extent, why was the branding, why was not a more consistent branding done between all these services? Because I would imagine as a user, it would be very difficult you would need a directory almost to recognize these services and to access them, but also to, with the idea of promoting them or creating more demand, you would want to see something more recognizable and identifiable than, what's happening currently. So what's the thought behind that?
Right. The intent really in SANDAG's role for the 3 pilots that we mentioned, is not for us to stay involved forever. The jurisdictions that are leading those are really the lead. And so the intent was for us to be involved early to help it get off the ground and then to kind of back away. So we want the ownership to stay with the, lead entity, which is not SANDAG. But I do understand your point about consistent branding, and that is noted. I will say that on our part, we have done the, which I think you're aware of, the procurement for vendors, and that was an intent to have some consistency with technology, hopefully, throughout the region. But again, jurisdictions can choose whether or not, and transit operators can choose whether or not they use it.
Thank you. Part 2 of my question has to do with eligibility for these proposed grants. And honestly, I'm disappointed to see that nonprofits are pretty much excluded on the grounds of sustainability. I think by doing that, one, you're making a lot of assumptions about sustainability in our community. Not all nonprofits are the same and have the same level of access to resources. And there's also the question of innovation. A lot of it is coming from the nonprofit community, which you would lose in the process. It's definitely not being driven by transit, as we've seen, or local governments. But really, it's also disappointing to see equity was rated so low. It's moved up a little bit, but I think that should be a consideration. Ultimately, if a nonprofit is not sustainably proposing a project, it's very easy. I mean, mostly you would imagine that they would simply stay out of the process, or you would easily weed them out. So I don't see a big loss in opening the door to nonprofits for this. I can also see that we would end up partnering with a local government agency inevitably anyway. So maybe that's not such a bad thing, but the exclusion feels bad. And there may be some missed opportunities here, because we also know that local governments are not always the most, I guess, energetic ones when coming up with, I know the money's an incentive, but still it could be our role to jog people into, jumping in this fray with ideas and proposals. So I hope you will reconsider that. I would appreciate that.
Awesome. You made a similar comment at Mobility Working Group, which I know Kalisa heard, and I'll relay that back to her again as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Sharon. Yes. Yes, I have a question. Thanks. I have a question about the pilot project recommendations, the difference between the Mobility Working Group and the Flexible Fleet Task Force, because they are different. The results are different. And who's on what?
So the Mobility Working Group tends to have a higher level, like directors of public works.
That's why. Got it.
And then at the Flex Fleet Task Force,
They don't
it's more
use it.
like my level people.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's people that don't use it that give a different spin on how to interpret it. And the other thing that I wanted to say is I have never seen any take ones or anything about these services that are offered. How are you getting publicity out? I tried that PB one once. I was the one that mentioned that about the operators. Never had any follow-up on it. But in the meantime, I won't do it again because it was so unsuccessful. But you need to publicize this. These aren't publicized, in my opinion. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Anyone else from the floor? Oh, yes, Claddy.
Hi, I'm Claddy. So Sharon just raised an issue that I think is really important. I was kind of saving this for later, but this morning in my trek to come to this meeting, I was on the Sprinter platform in North County, and there was a it looked like a sawhorse type sign that was chained to the railing between the tracks and the platform. So it was kind of cockeyed, could easily be tripped over. And it had a banner at the top that said, oh, new on-demand, blah, blah. Anyway, most of the sign was very small print, very close to the ground. I could see the banner because I took a photograph with my cell phone and was able to expand it enough to see that. But if that's the way we're going to get the word out about any of these programs, that's not working. The other thing I want to say is that, and I know you're not really addressing this very much, but if you want community participation or feedback or surveys, I think it would be really helpful if we could have sort of regional charts. So this information is great. You guys do a great job. Problem is, it's like a huge overview of stuff and becomes bewildering. So if I'm in North County, I'd really like to know what is available to me, when it's available, and maybe a cost comparison and some things like that, because that's where we're at. We're at the practical level. We want to use services. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Is there any other comments from the group, from the committee? So I do have a question regarding percentages of accessible vehicles. Do we have that information? Because one of the big, one of the big gaps is accessible transportation.
Right. It really varies from program to program. I know, for example, in Pacific Beach, 1 out of their 3 vehicles is an accessible vehicle. We monitor typically the demand. And so what will happen is, if we saw more of a demand for accessible vehicles in that area, we would look to work with the vendor to increase the amount of wheelchair accessible vehicles for that service. This is something that I think this committee could consider at a different date. I don't know that, for example, that the neighborhood electric vehicles are the most comfortable vehicles for a wheelchair passenger. And I wonder sometimes if we could do better to put like a van or something that's, a better, nicer ride as an overlay in that service area instead of trying to serve everybody with an open air golf cart.
Thank you. Any other comments here from the committee, Sharon? Charlie?
Yeah. Looking at the photographs and thinking about the size of wheelchairs and the ability to fit them on some of those vehicles, on scooters and stuff, when you're looking at alternative micro modes of transportation, it needs to be considered. Can a wheelchair really fit on it, or is that in theory? And can a person with a disability actually use it? And what is the hailing system? Because I think the Fed cars, you have to wave at them. That doesn't do me any good. So I haven't used it. I thought about it, but I can't see to wave at them. I don't know if they're looking.
Thank you. Any other comments from the committee? I don't see anyone. So we'll go back to public comments.
Thank you, Chair. The original draw, let's try you again, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what's going on. So what I was going to say is with all these electric vehicles, I think we need to be mindful of kind of the dangers of them and having people ride around in them, especially, near the ocean and different things. These lithium batteries are very dangerous. As we know, there have been many fires that have taken place, and there are ones that can't be put out, but also when they're being charged and they're charging on the docking station or whatever, not only does it take a lot of electricity to do that, and so the more that we put out forward, the more it's going to affect the power grid, but just the radiation that comes off of these vehicles when they're being charged, let alone just like when they're being driven, I'm wondering if you guys have done any kind of testing with a meter or anything like that, because I could take a radiation meter to one of the charging stations that emit radiation just when they're not even charging. But if you plug something into it, it's just like our phones. They emit way more radiation when they're drawing the energy. And so that can lead to a lot of health effects and different things. And so I'm just wondering if that's something for, the health and safety mechanism of this, if you guys would be willing to go test the radiation that is coming and being emitted from the charging stations, and do it when there's nothing plugged in, and then do it when it is plugged in, and see how much the increase is, but understand, do something where you can see how much is being emitted and at the different stages, and look into what kind of health effects that has for people, because if our phones can cause health damages to our bodies and different things like that, these are like a lot of phones plugged in, basically. So I would just encourage you to do that so that you can be sure that this is a safe and reliable way to go.
And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments, we can move to the next item. Thank you, Danielle. Item 6 is an information item with updates from NTS, NCTD, and FACT. I let Brian introduce the representatives from the operators. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Chair. We'll start with MTS, then go to NCTD, and then on to FACT. So, Charles?
All right, good morning. So first, I want to start off letting everyone know of Free Ride Day, which is October 2nd. You do not need a Pronto card to ride. That includes bus, trolley, everything except paratransit.
What day is that?
I'm sorry?
What day was that?
October 2nd.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we recently rolled out the contactless payment. Many of you may have used it already. If not, it is available on our trolleys and fixed route buses. Ridership for both fixed route, trolley, and our paratransit continues to increase. We've seen that increase, a huge increase in FY24, now going into FY25. Speaking of battery electric vehicles, we recently went over 1 million miles in our battery electric fleet. We did announce that at our board meeting back in July. And lastly, the Poway School District recently reduced a bunch of routes due to driver availability. What MTS did was add an additional tripper for Route 945A to accommodate the school children leaving and going to school. So there's an additional route to get them to school and home when it releases. That's it.
Thank you, Robert. NCTD?
All right, NCTD. Both our Lyft and our Breeze services, we're fully staffed. So we no longer have driver issues. We are fully staffed there. On the paratransit side, our ridership is continuing to grow, just like Charles is having the same issues on his side. We are still below pre-COVID numbers though. So we still got a ways to go to get back to where we once were. NCTD Plus, we just saw the presentation on that. That is in the city of San Marcos. We're heading into the 3rd month of this program. Ridership is continuing to increase. We currently have 5 vehicles that we are using for this service. We're going to bring on 5 additional vehicles. We're in the process of rebranding them, getting them all wrapped and ready to go just in case we need them. An additional service we brought in was Sorrento Valley Coaster Connection. Thank you, MTS. Appreciate that. That's going really smooth. We've had no issues there. I'm in the process of replacing those vehicles. Those vehicles are a little older. They got 200,000 miles on them, and it's time that we purchase new vehicles. So we're going to purchase the same identical vehicle that's out there right now. It'll be gasoline. When we get to 2030, we'll start looking at alternative fuels. But right now, the technology's not there for a 30-foot bus. So we're going to just stick what we currently have. At all of our transit centers, our coaster stations, our sprinter stations, and our whole entire network, we're looking at all the Braille placards. And we're in the process of purchasing new Braille placards and replacing anything that needs to replace, anything that's old, anything that's missing. So we're going through the whole entire agency, looking at every place, our elevators, anything that has Braille in it, we're in the process of replacing or upgrading. We have brought on 2 additional taxi providers to help with the Lyft paratransit service. That's Soul Transportation and Casa Companion. So that'll bring us up to 3 taxi providers on top of our paratransit services. It's just supplemental service and it's more of a service protection. So later at night, when we start getting into the 10, 11 o'clock at night hour, it just doesn't make sense to keep a full bus out there. So we transition those services over to our taxi providers so they can do taxi service. And if we happen to have a paratransit customer, then we can have the taxi pick it up. So it's just financially makes sense to do it that way. Both Breeze and Paratransit is doing a bid in the first week in October. All of our drivers will be rebidding on new routes. It's required under the union contract. So we're doing what we need to do, but we are going to do some additional training with the time change coming, with it getting darker sooner, and drivers on new routes. There's always that potential that they're going to get lost, they're going to be late, and we're doing everything we can to prevent that. Free Ride Day, Wednesday, October 2nd, which you mentioned. That is not for paratransit, it is not for NCTD Plus, and it is not for our Coaster Connection services. So it's just for our fixed route services. Not Coaster Connection, but the Coaster service, yes. And then we're in the process of training our drivers for the hydrogen fuel vehicles that we're in the process of getting. So we're trying to get ahead of it and make sure all of the drivers are prepared and ready and know how to use the hydrogen vehicles. We just finished training all of our drivers on the electric vehicles on how to be safe and be aware of what's happening there. And that's all I have.
Thank you. In fact.
Thank you, Brian. Around June of this year, and a little bit in July, around the time of the last SSTAC meeting, we concluded the first Right Fact Now pilot project, which was on-demand service throughout the county with less than an hour's notice. It was a successful pilot. We provided 24,000 plus rides under that program. That service ended, as I mentioned, a couple of months ago, and hopefully we'll be able to reintroduce that if we're successful in AFA funding cycle 2. Right now, the Right Fact service was reinstated. We're operating at low capacity, approximately 50 rides a day, and limited availability on weekends due to the funding we have available right now. FACT's annual Board of Directors meeting is coming up on December 4 in Balboa Park. I look forward to seeing all of you there. It's on December 4, Wednesday in the morning, approximately 8:30 a.m., but you will be receiving lots of notifications about the meeting and save the date notices soon. We're also expecting 9 FTA-funded vehicles to arrive, accessible minivans very shortly, and we've let our vendors know, and we're looking forward to partnering with them on accommodating these new vehicles in our vendor fleets and putting them to use in our coming services. That's all I have.
Are there any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Chair. I have one public commenter, the original draw. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I was just making sure. So yeah, this is interesting. I'm wondering with the 9 vehicles that are going to be coming, if you're only doing 50 rides a day, is it because of the vehicles that you're using, you don't have any more capacity, or is it just the funding? So I mean, how is like, are the 9 vehicles going to be able to provide the rides that need to be provided, or are you just going to, because does the funding go towards gas and are you going to have drivers to use them? Is it going to up the capacity on how many rides you can do per day? I'm just wondering. And then again, if you're training people on electric vehicles, are you going to, you know, be discussing like what happens if a fire breaks out? Are you discussing things with them like the radiation that comes off of these, this type of vehicle, and if they are anywhere near a charging station while possibly they could be waiting unless it's being charged outside of where they are, but anybody that's near those charging stations are going to actually be getting radiation in massive amounts. And you know, just think about when we're, you know, providing all of these new types of things and you're going and replacing or upgrading, how many people are actually, I mean, you're still below pre-COVID numbers. And what are you doing to get above that? And is it ever going to go above that? Because we're spending a lot of money on this kind of transit, and there isn't, you know, an abundance of ridership. It's not like you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many people, we need to get more and more vehicles or whatever. It just seems like, you know, the amount of money spent compared to the amount of people that ride is just, it's pretty negligent, because there's more people driving vehicles.
Well, that concludes the public comments.
Are there any comments from the committee?
Hi, so for fact, we have heard, Travelers Aid has heard from other agencies, program updates that you guys email updates to everyone, well, select partners. If you can include all of the 5310 and also SMG recipients as a CTSA, I think it would be really good to work for the partnerships that we discuss all the time. So maybe start with FACT and start at home to give those updates out to the partner agencies, so then we can all try to share information, updated services, as we're all working on limited funds right now. So just asking if we can be added to that mailing list.
Any other comments from the committee? Okay.
Yeah, this is Sharon Beckus. Small feedback. Some of the new buses and the trolley have these seats that are slippery. I don't know what the material is, but it's not like the fabric from before. So I wear a lot of sun protective clothing. So I'm starting to slide on all the seats. And I just wanted to give the feedback of, I'd like to see maybe riders actually, before you go ahead and order a whole bunch of buses, find out how the riders like them. I don't know if you can do that. Don't know. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Any other comments? No. So there are no further comments. We go now to item number 7, unmet needs, with Brian.
Thank you, Chair. This is our standing item to address unmet needs, make sure and we're really giving opportunities at every meeting to listen on these. You know, Tim and Ruby are obviously listening to these and noting them for the next coordinated plan update. We had our public hearing at the last meeting. I think usually in our September meeting following the public hearing, we come back with any unmet needs we heard during that meeting. If there was something specific asked or if there was things to follow up on, we generally would follow up on those. But I'm going to blame Zach leaving us a couple of weeks ago on me not being prepared for that. So we'll come back in, I think, our next meeting in November with a follow-up from that full hearing. I don't think there was anything major that came out of the official public hearing, but still we do want to cross that T and dot that I on that one. But this is our standing item to make sure that we are listening for unmet needs. So the chance for the public and the members here to provide any unmet needs that we haven't previously done in the last year. Again, Tim and Ruby stayed in the room so they could note these as well, but they'll be doing their survey here shortly to really further dive into more of the unmet needs in the region and make sure that those are getting documented properly into our next coordinated plan update. So with that, I'll hand it back, Chair, for public and member comments.
Are there any public comments for this item number 7, Tessa?
There are no public comments.
Oh, thank you, Tessa. Are there any comments? Yes. Todd.
Hey, Tim. I've brought it up in past meetings, but the 56 corridor is usually one that's just notoriously unmet needs through there, mainly because there's no fixed route. So then thus there's no ADA paratransit. And it's just I mean, for the agency that I serve and people with developmental disabilities, it's a real hard area to get service of any type through there. So just wanted to bring it up. Thanks.
The other Todd.
Hi, yeah, another comment. I've made this comment before a long time ago. I think it's important that we also look at supporting training programs for drivers that are going to drive the vehicles and provide this transportation. It's a huge, drivers are a huge unmet need in the county. And I think it's one of the things that restricts a lot of the services that we can provide.
I made this comment previously, but just since you're in the room. So for specialized transportation providers, we heard from FACT about their limited capacity right now, and that's something that we're seeing across the board. With JFS, we've had to put a cap on services as well as a waiting list. Travelers Aid, I know, is facing the same. Where as the population increases, we're expecting a higher and higher demand for this agile and innovative service.
Todd again.
Yeah, the other Todd. I just wanted to piggyback on Todd's, the other Todd's comments in the sense of drivers. And I think it's something that was changed at the state, legislative area where, if I'm understanding correctly, agencies like his that operates large vehicles that require a Class B license, you can't, as the agency, do the training any longer for the drivers themselves. Thus, they have to go receive training outside. And it's, a hindrance on either promoting staff from within or hiring somebody and doing their own training. So I think that's I just wanted to amplify that a little bit more because I'm hearing it from agencies as well, not just Todd's, but other agencies in the area that they can't train their own drivers. So.
Any other comments from the group? Our next meeting, thank you for the updates, Brian. And that was the last scheduled item for this meeting. Our next meeting will be November 19 at 10 a.m. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.